The breath is the bridge between the mind and the body. It's the direct influence we can take in order to get to any desired state. And it's always with us. You already have it within.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Wellness podcast. Today we have a special guest joining from Switzerland, Dominique Ceara. And how are you today, Dominique?
I'm excellent. Thank you. How are you?
Very good. So today we're talking about breath first, teaching children and ourselves the language the body already knows. So tell us a bit why you think that breathing is so important. I mean, everyone knows that it's important because we're alive, but why else is it important?
The breath is the bridge between the mind and the body, and it's the direct influence we can take in order to get to any desired state. And it's really a fast track to get yourself regulated or into hyper focus, right into balance. It's an all rounder and it's always with us. That makes it absolute magic because you don't need to go and buy a tool, you already have it within.
Amazing. So we have a tool that we don't know how to use very well, and let's talk about some of the ways that you've found that are helpful to help children, parents, adults, anyone that might be, not even just stressed, just maybe already happy, but could use a little bit more information about what breath work can be doing. And let's imagine, a situation if you're a parent, it's almost 9 p.m., your kid or kids are not falling asleep. They might be irritating you a little bit. You might be stressed. They might be stressed. And there's some simple things, like you mentioned, that we can do to calm our nervous system, calm the situation, be more present. Tell us some of that. What do you think could be done in a situation like that?
Yeah, it's really not that difficult. It's simple, but it's not that easy. Like when you are already dysregulated, then obviously getting into the state of being balanced seems to be a little bit trickier. What I find very helpful, I practice this with my daughter, and I also teach this, is to just take your kid on the journey with you. You don't need to go in a separate room to do the breath work. You can do this right on the spot. Ideally, you take your kid with you on the journey because they learn most by seeing and watching you do it. So what I do very often is I really just either like sit down, or you can even do that standing. It's always good to get on the same level as your kids, just so that it's really eye level. And then just simply breathe. It doesn't need to be fancy. Like whenever your inhales are shorter than your exhale, you are sending your body, your nervous system, the signal to relax and calm down. So it can be a simple 4 in, 6 out exhale. And doing this a couple of times will just naturally put you in a more regulated state. And when you're doing this, and you're doing this in front of your kids, you invite them to be a part of this. So my daughter literally comes to me and she's like, "Mom, regulate with me." She gives me her hands and we do it together. And it really doesn't take a lot of time.
Amazing. And when we talked about co-regulation, it's the ability to help someone else regulate. It could be a child, but it also could be your partner. It could be your coworker. As humans, our breath can regulate. As we know, women's menstrual cycle can be synchronized, and we've also talked about shared activity, even virtually, that can sync up our brain waves. Sorry, and beautiful example. Great that you're being able to do this with your daughter, and also, we'll talk more about that. But you wrote a book for children to help them do that with their parents. Can you tell us a little bit of a preview of that?
Yes, my pleasure. Yeah, I was searching for a book that would help my daughter and me. I found many books on breathing, but I didn't find what I was looking for. I was looking for a book with stories over a month that would just help us co-regulate. So co-regulation happens when you just touch base on that very quickly, but I'll just recap again,
Hmm.
is when you are regulating with your kid, meaning, for example, you're breathing with your kid. There is a lot more than what we can just see. So words are one, but your kids and also your partner, like they can sense how you're doing, how your emotional state is without you even saying a word. So when you are tapping into self-regulation in front of your kid, you are inviting it on the journey with you. So what we did is my daughter picked the pictures. So the illustrations are her ideas. And we had a book written with 32 stories. They're all based on courage, taking care of nature, finding your true voice, standing up for yourself, all of those topics. And we have combined them with the power of breathing. So they're really just simple exercises. They're the same exercises for every day, which may sound boring at first, but it's actually so much needed because your kids and also yourself, we learn through repetition. So if we have constantly a different breathing exercise, we are not really building the habit. We're just tapping into what's possible. But if we are having the same breathing exercises over and over again, combined with different stories, we start to form a habit and we make it more easy to tap into this when we actually need it. So that's the book we came up with. And yes, like so far, like it really turned out really great. Like people, the feedback from it is really good. And it really, I do really truly believe it helps.
Well, thank you. So you mentioned breathwork and also stories of courage and confidence, which are also part of our awe frameworks of happiness, and nature, which we know is important for attention and for calm, right? So very nice. Thank you for having this book out there for people to be able to use with their family. And can you tell me a little bit more about how family members could use some of the techniques that you talk about in terms of regulating the whole family, about discussing about what easy things that maybe 5-10 minutes, no more, that we can do to help emotional regulation, and why that's so important.
Yes, I think first it's really important to involve your family in the process, not to force them, but to just invite them in. Like you can't force anybody to regulate, but what you can do is you can show by example by walking by walking your by wait by walking your talk. You can really get people involved, and when they see that it's working for you, then it's also opening the door for them to try it themselves. And again, it does not need to be complex, or it doesn't need to be an hour-long ritual. It can be as simple as, so for example, with my daughter, I really ensure that in the mornings and in the evenings, I take and plan sufficient time to regulate with her. And we make it really very simple. Like when I wake her up, I go into her room, I cuddle with her, like we breathe, we like just have a slow start into the day. You need time for this, so you need to plan a little bit of extra time, but it saves you time at the end, because when you start the day right, stuff just goes way smoother. When you're already like in stress and you're in a hurry, and then nothing seems to work. So this is why just thinking ahead and learning from the past experiences, whatever bottlenecks families face, and then tend to them, is really super helpful. So it may be like the start of the day where you are just taking a couple of extra minutes, starting the day slow. It may be at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's always a very nicely seen experience, because that's when like kids had a long day, you had a long day, everybody is full with all the experiences of the day, and then just to calm down together, sit on the couch, read a book together, or just talk together, take time, put your phones away, and just, even if it's just 15 minutes, it doesn't need to be an hour. That's where so many people are mistaken. It doesn't need to be hours. If you can give your family uninterrupted attention for 20 minutes, that gives so much more than scrapping out an hour but constantly checking your phone on the side.
Thanks so much, Dominique. And that's what we also do. As you know, at AW, we have our 25 minutes live weekly resets, and also we have some as short as 5 minutes. And if you want to check out what we do in terms of audio guidance that include breath work and neuroscience, that is at the Digital Reset on Patreon. You can click through the link right now. And we would love to have, more specific guided meditation for kids. We do some from adolescents, for parents, for kids would be even, more interesting to say we can do something that's really tailored for you. And I really appreciate the fact that you're trying to, not force anything on people, just encourage and show by action, right? So I have a teenager, and I can tell you that, there is some resistance to some suggestions, to say it mildly. And we want to not force anyone, but kind of show them the way. And actually, when my son was younger, he was more attuned to mindfulness, more attuned to breathwork and meditation and all those types of useful things to calm himself. And sometimes he would even come up to me and say, "Dad, you need a meditation, you need to calm down." But now as a teenager, it's a little bit different. So do you have any tips for parents that are maybe dealing with teenagers?
One very important one is keep the compassion towards yourself, in not being too harsh to judge yourself along the journey of raising and being a part in a teenager's life, and also to cut them a slack in terms of the teenage years are so fragile. There's so many different interruptions that are coming into a kid's and then teenager's life, and just really building or keeping that foundation of trust within your kids, establishing this early, like help your kids to feel that the environment with you is safe. So just having that open ear without maybe always straightly jumping into judgment or telling them how to do things, but just holding the room, holding the space, making it a safe space for your kid to return to you and open up with whatever happened, even if it's not how you as a parent liked. And being here is one of the greatest gifts we can give our kids.
Thanks so much. Yes, letting them the space to return without expecting them to, and with non-judgment and compassion again. So I think we're very aligned in that, and hopefully that's useful for some parents to have less drama and more collaboration and compassion in the families, right? You talked about slow breathing, calming down the nervous system. We know, of course, of the polyvagal theory. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is for people who don't know?
My pleasure. Yes, so very simply said, we have those three states. So one is when you are relaxed, you are feeling socially safe and connected. The other one is if you are in freeze or fight or flight. And the third one is when you are in freeze mode. So depending on which state you're in, on a bodily term, so on a somatic level, you can't think your way to safety. You need to experience it in your body. So it's all about feeling safe rather than talking your way to safety. And if you are grounded, so if you are feeling safe, you are relaxed, your body is relaxed. There is a lot of for most deep belly breathing, there is a relaxation that can be felt. When you feel that there is danger, you can either fall into fight or flight when you like tense up, and you can literally feel this in your body with a tight jaw or just all like cramped up, and you can already see the tension when I like this is like relaxed. So I'm deep belly breathing, I'm here, I'm present, and the other ones, like the other two states, again, fight or flight, when you are ready to, as the word says, like rooted back into history when, you know, a couple of 100 years ago, we still had those real physical dangers. Like our bodies, they do not, even though we have evolved a lot, our bodies are still stuck in the same biology. So danger is danger. It doesn't matter if it's physical or mental. Our stressors may have changed. Like we don't need to fight a bear anymore, but we can still feel unease. We can still feel like we're in danger, and our body reacts the same way today as it did hundreds of years ago. So it's really important to find a way to get back into a regulated state. It is okay to feel stressed. We are not built in a way that we need to be in full relaxation mode 24/7. We like it's absolutely normal and okay to be stressed, to be in a state of stress. The important thing is to be able to get yourself back into a balanced and regulated state. And a very easy and simple way to get there is just by focus on your breathing.
Thanks for that. And yes, it's often a misconception that stress is bad. Actually, without stress, we would not do nothing and probably die. So there is also something called eustress, EU stress, which is kind of the positive stress. And again, the idea is not to have no stress, but it's to be able to have high stress and have maybe, again, we can talk about the HRV or heart rate variability, which allows you to have a high heart rate and then to come down very quickly, right? So you want to be able to have the stress when you need it, when there is really a tiger or something important, or your kid is drowning, right? You need to be there and you need to have that high cortisol, high stress, and then you can calm down. And that's what breath work is one of the tools to help you regulate that. For the neuroscience in the audience, we're talking about the ventral vagal and dorsal vagal nerve, but for the average parent who doesn't want to geek out on neuroscience, there's a great book also with pictures called The Yes Brain, and that books talk about those three states that you mentioned in terms of colors, right? So the green zone is the safe, calm, social zone. The red zone is the fight or flight, where you want to save, do something, run away. Um, and actually, the blue zone is when you are avoiding, right? So that's the zone where you're not actively showing stress. That's not the flight or flight, it's the freeze, right? So we want to make sure that we're aware of our blue, green, and red zone, as well as that of our children, right? So if we can kind of see if they're avoiding for too long, if they are anxious or stressed or angry, then they're in the red zone or the blue zone. And we want to make sure that we can help them stay in the green zone as long as possible. We can start to look at some studies, scientific studies that I've researched for this episode. And we can talk a bit about what breathwork is in the scientific literature. If you want to put the first study here, we're talking about just explaining what type of breathwork exists. So there's some from the yoga tradition, from the Buddhist tradition. So alternate nostril breathing is one technique where you have 10 breath in one nostril, 10 breath in the other one. Then the Tibetan Buddhists talk about vase breathing, and we have some psychedelic type of breathing, some other scientific coherence breathing, which is talking about matching your breath to your heartbeat and choosing the frequency for that. So if we go to the next slide, and welcome back, Dominique. We're just looking at some research here. So this research is from 2023, talks about the effect of breath work on stress and mental health, a meta-analysis of RCTs. So looking at many studies, it concludes that breath work may be effective for improving stress and mental health. It does urge still to have some nuanced approach and not just talking about hype, but looking at the evidence. And Dominique will tell us about some of the evidence she sees in the classes that she does, in the workshops, the books, and the one-on-one sessions that she saw some amazing improvement. Looking at the next study, this one is from 2026, January, so very recent. It's titled Evaluation of Two Easy to Implement Digital Breathing. And this is Vetter et al. And, you know, the result shows that it is very important to look at the personalized perspective. So it's not something that everyone can use and everyone will always have positive result. And maybe, Dominique, you can tell us a bit about how have you been able to personalize breath work for different individuals or families?
Um, the most important starting point here is to really tune into where a family or an individual stands. Very often there is a certain dysregulation taking place. There, mostly, it's about regulating, about coming back to the center, about grounding, and just finding your balance. Like very many people are very activated. They're running through their days, activated from the moment they wake up until they fall asleep, having trouble with sleeping and calming down, having issues to focus, having issues to just sit still. And with breath work, you can really tailor to all of those challenges. And over time, you can really work towards a significant impact. But it does, like you can already experience by just a quick breathing session what breathwork can do. But if you are obviously using this over a time period, you can reap a lot more fruits from it by making it a habit and actually, staying on it.
Thanks, Dominique. And yes, it's really important to see that you might try it once and it's not doing the effect that you want. But the more personalized you will get, the more you understand your own breathing and stress pattern. And again, stress not being a bad thing, but how you deal with stress, how you become resilient, then you can tweak your practice and try different things, right? So we talked about one breathing that is good that we can repeat. But if that's not working for you, there's other types of breath work, right? So we can look at the effects and then change accordingly. If we go to the next study, interesting study here called the efficacy of mindfulness, breath work, and neurofeedback. So it's a holistic approach that does not include only breath work, but presence or mindfulness and neurofeedback. We've had podcasts previously with neurofeedback experts, and we have some in our teams that is actually measuring the different types of waves in your brain as you're doing some of those exercises. So just to make sure that breath work is activating different parts of the brain and that we can say that there's some effect. This study, if we go to the next slide, concludes that if you integrate those three non-invasive, accessible, low-cost pathway, you increase emotional resilience and physiological healing. So you're helping your mind, your resilience, and actually your body. And specifically, and Dominique can talk about this, for individual facing trauma-related stress.
Yes, so with trauma, that's always a delicate one. There are different ways of how you approach a person or like a breathwork structure for someone who has been going through trauma, because everybody handles trauma differently. There can be two people experiencing the same kind of traumatic event, and they are handling this in two very different ways. So it's very important to address a person on the stage they're at. Often we work with pendulation. That means you are going into a stressor, you're going into an tense situation, but then you're calmly and safely getting a person out of it. And then you're going in a little bit more like with a pendulum, right? Like the way it swings, like you start small and then like always a bit bigger. So you're going in and out and you're stretching the capacity of a person's capacity of working through things. It's very important that when you go for a breathwork session, somewhere like physical or also online, to really pick a person who you feel safe with. There are a lot of more expensive and cheaper versions out there, and there are like the term coach and breathwork coach is per se not very well, how do you say, protected. So many people with even just a couple of hours can facilitate. And it's really important to take your time with the decision there and go with a contact you are either already familiar about or like really feel that there is a connection, because working through trauma, especially in an environment where you take breath work into, working through it, you need to be really careful. Just because if you are not in a room where you properly held, you can activate a lot of emotions and you can steer a lot, and then there is no safe place for this to go afterwards. So it's always important to check in with yourself, see where you or how you feel. Always trust your body. Your body knows best. If you feel like here's a hard stop, listen to your body. So really taking it easy on the trauma resolution part. Like if we're just talking about regular breath work, if we're talking about getting into an energized mode, into balance, into relaxation, those are safe techniques. But for example, if you're doing the energizing breath work, you need to be a little bit careful. Are you pregnant? Are you having, severe trauma, for example, etc.? Those things need to be taken into consideration, but the balancing breath and the relaxation breath are really safe practices to use on a daily basis. However, when working through trauma, work with an expert, go to someone you trust, and listen and trust your own body.
Thanks so much for those very useful words and advice, Dominique. Here we see the study to go a bit deeper. It talks about 24 sessions across 30 days that allowed people with different physical conditions, mental condition, including diagnosis of PTSD, so trauma, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and cardiovascular symptoms. So a range of different physical and mental issues that after 24 sessions in 30 days showed real increase in physical and mental condition, right? So again, one session is useful, but to see real result, we're talking about 1 month. And I think that's what your book is based on, 32 days. Is that correct, Dominic?
Yes, the book, however, serves a different purpose. So it's not for trauma
Yes, it's
resolution,
not for
it's
trauma.
for habit building. Yes.
So yeah. So if we go to the next study, we're looking here at efficacy of slow-paced breath work, which we're talking about, and this in primary school teachers to see if we can reduce burnout. And it seems from the research here from Halles et al. In 2025, December, so a few months ago, that the advantages of coherence breathing was teacher training initiative that improved teachers' mental health in general. So we're talking about parents, talking about children, but also teachers and schools and staff could use some of those breathwork technique in their work, in their daily lives, right, Dominic?
Yes, because especially teenagers and kids can drive you crazy, and there is a lot of tension in the room sometimes. There are a lot of kids talking and doing different things at the same moment. So getting yourself in center, being regulated yourself, definitely influences the whole room.
I saw some other study that also teacher not only benefit themselves, but their students have better academic scores and are happier as well, right? So help one, help the class, help the group. And it's always to think about the community and who are we interacting, as you talked about co-regulation. If the teacher is regulated, then the students will be more regulated as well, right? And I think the final study here is an older study, 1999, that's called Breathwork, Exploring the Frontier of Being and Doing. So that is, talking about how breathwork allows you to stop and be instead of doing. And I think that's very important to understand that we can be, and we're normally happier in a state of being or aware doing, right? So this talks about specifically increasing awareness, right? Awe, our company is based on awareness, wellness, and enjoyment. And everything we do, including breath work, is to increase awareness. And this study talks about this. And another section of the study mentions we talked about the EEG, right? So you can have an EEG with neurofeedback or going into the lab. In the 1990s, there was no portable EEG, so that was done in the lab. But it shows that the theta waves are actually there, and it could help release storage suffering that may be on the rise. So that's it for the science segment. What are your thoughts on all these studies, Dominique?
Yes, they're very interesting. I think they serve different purposes. So there is, like, just in general, there is a lot of information out there on AI platforms, on the web, on the news. Like, there is a lot. I remember a couple of years ago, and I'm still not immune to this, is an overfloating information. Like, there is a lot of information, and sometimes it's just also very overwhelming because you can hear one thing over there, another thing over there, and a third thing over there. So really take it into your own hands of being informed, and also take it into your own hands of trusting your body's signals. What we lost entirely in, like, nowadays, is we do not trust ourselves enough anymore. We trust, like, all this, like the science we hear and like the news, etc. But we carry it all within. Like, we have the whole set of information. If we would just calm down enough to listen, to hear what our body wants to tell us, we would know exactly what to do. But we are so steered from everything that happens that we just, like, are very detached. So yes, it's great to get the scientific evidence. Always also check in with, does it match with where you personally stand? For example, the study with the 24 sessions in 30 days, where you work through trauma, like, this doesn't work for everyone. Like, you really need to be, like, for some people this may be too much, or like, so for this it's just check where you are, check your state. For some people that may help, for others they may need a softer approach. Like, I'm not here to judge this, like, either way, but just for people who are hearing any kind of information and what apparently is magic and what doesn't work at all, like, make your own judgment. Be
Well,
open, make your own judgment.
well, first, there is no magic, right? So that's the first thing. People want quick fix. They want to know, I do X, Y, Z, and I have this end result. That doesn't work. It is the process, and it's always, we're always learning. We are helping people, but we're also always learning and communicating. That's why we're having those podcasts where I'm learning from you, and hopefully we're all learning in the audience. By the way, if you're live, you can ask questions and have comments as well, in whatever channel that you're listening to. And the idea that we're getting too much information and we don't know which information to trust, and that we can also, trust ourselves sometimes, is very interesting. And I think what's important is to remember that we don't know everything today, and that we keep improving, and that there's no set rules. We can see what works, and what's something that could work today for you, Dominique, in 2 weeks or 2 years, the same thing could maybe not work for you as well, right? So it's not just individual specific, it's context specific, it's time specific, right? So everything is evolving, and when you're able to be more in touch with that, be more aware, and be in the being, not just doing, you can get that feedback quicker. And it doesn't have to be neurofeedback from a machine. It can be your own body and you being attuned to that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So to continue a little bit on the aspect of trauma, can you tell us a little bit about how you've been able to help people with trauma in your coaching? And if you want to share a little bit about if you had some personal experience that you want to share as well.
Yes, thank you. I have a lot of people who are coming to me who have panic attacks. And many of those people are coming from psychiatrists who recommended them to just breathe when they have a panic attack. Now, one very important thing when you are struggling with panic attacks is you have to practice how to breathe in a panic attack outside of a panic attack. Because when you are in panic, you do not think rationally. You will just fall back on your automated how do you say, automated patterns. So when you learn how to breathe correctly and deeply, and you make this a practice, you will be able to access this a lot easier when you actually need it. So this is what I work quite heavily with a lot of my clients, to just really learn this regulation, because everything builds from there. Like, I work with top-notch professionals in organizational environments, and I also work with private, like people in private. Like, I also work with moms, with dads. Like, there's so many different hats people are wearing, and at the end it always comes down to awareness. Awareness is a very important factor, because if you're not aware, how do you want to change anything? So awareness is, our first stepping stone. And then it's about how we can use and leverage the breath to support us in how we want to show up in the world, not just for others, but for ourselves. And the reason why I landed here is because I struggled with exactly this. I am coming from a corporate environment. I had high pressure jobs. I always wanted to become a coach, but I wasn't really connected with myself on a somatic level. So somatic means bodily level. And only when I was pregnant with my daughter, I really started to look into different ways of how I can, deal with my own issues, challenges along the way. And breathwork really opened the door for me that I never even thought it would exist. And it showed me that so many things you can't really rationally explain, or you understand it on a rational level, but it doesn't change anything, are actually layers that are so much deeper, and that you need to work through the power of your own body. And the breath is the most accessible tool you can use for this. The breath is the only tool that you can use to steer something that is working automatically. So we are breathing if you're thinking about breathing or not. But if you're consciously aware and you are tapping into your breath, you can control the way you breathe. And with this, you directly control your state of being, because you cannot be angry if you are like this furious anger. When you are deep belly breathing, it's physiological, not possible. So there are many of those different techniques you can use to get into different stages.
That's amazing. That's a power that we have at our disposal, and that we're just not told or equipped or practiced enough to use. Um, so yeah, our breathing affects our anger directly. That's something that people should remember. And I love the fact that you are very aware that it is very difficult for someone to start breathing when they are in a panic attack, or you don't have to go all the way to panic attack. It could be even low degree frustration or anger, right? And when you say that people are not thinking well, people should realize that, right? It's not that you're crazy or that you don't know what you're doing. It is actually also physiological. When you are in the red zone, your body is in flight or flight, and then your thinking part, the prefrontal lobe, is dysregulated. So you cannot think as clearly as you would not if you're not angry or not in panic, right? So knowing that, you can practice to breathe in when you are in the green zone. And once, if it happens that you get to the red zone for whatever reason, you're prepared because you've practiced that, right?
Yes, because then you tap into what your body knows. It's not a rational decision to now breathe differently, but because you already have it stored, because you already made your body familiar with it, it's something you can tap into without actively needing to think about. And this is what you need when you are that stressed or angry, or when all of the other things are not working anymore, because your brain literally shuts down and it's not accessible for rational, logical thoughts and decision-making progresses.
Exactly. And you talked about your daughter and your pregnancy. Would you like to share about the birth? We had a pre-podcast call, and I thought that was interesting for you. If you want to share a bit what you've learned there.
Yes. When I got pregnant, I knew that I wanted for my daughter to have with nice, I mean an unbothered, unworried, safe childhood. And one thing I stumbled across on is that birth per se is our first official traumatic experience every human being experiences. So I wanted to make this as positive as I could for my daughter. And I looked at the ways there are, and I stumbled across hypnobirthing. So hypnobirthing is a way how you can put yourself in some state of hypnosis with your breath through affirmations, through music, etc., and where you are really connected again to the power of your breath with your own body, but also with the baby inside of you. And the beautiful thing was that I'm not going to say it wasn't painful. Like birth, I felt it. But it was one of the most beautiful experiences I had in my entire life, because there was such a teamwork going on between the baby and me, and just on a bodily level, you can't even explain this in words. It was just bodies were working so beautifully with each other that this was such an eye-opener of how powerful breathwork actually is. I never thought this up to this point, that breathing is something we would actually need to think of. I thought that's just something we do and that's about it, and worry about other stuff. And this really opened the door for me to wanting to tap more into this, wanting to get to the bottom of why is this actually working and what else can we do with this. And from this on, I was really hooked on breathwork, and I worked through a lot of my own issues before I started to go into teacher trainings and really dive into the other angle of it.
Thanks for that beautiful story. And you mentioned pain, and a lot of people know that giving birth is normally not without pain. But the idea is that it was a beautiful experience, and I would assume because you were connected with your body, somatic, right, embodied, you were connected to your baby, you were connected to your breath, and probably you were connected to the pain as well, right? So the Buddhist thoughts always say that every human have pain, but suffering is optional, right? So you can have physical pain, but you don't have to suffer, and the suffering comes from your mental amplification or judging of that pain as unwanting, or the aversion to pain, right? We're all going to have physical pain. You get to be a, a mother to a beautiful human being. You have to go through that pain. Why don't you make it the best experience, which you did? So thanks for sharing that story. That makes me smile, and happy for you and your family. And I also want to kind of think of this as, when you are experiencing something in the body, right? So we talked about somatic, again, things in the body. There's also a learning process. I'm doing some work in education, and just did some research on embodied learning. So most people think that you can only learn from the brain, because in school you're told, sit down, learn this, go to the exam and do that again. But in fact, we're always learning through our body, through our senses, through our internal and external experiences as well. And so, that experience seems to have been a learning experience from you, to actually go through breath work, process your own trauma, and then now help the world with that. So thanks for that story, Dominique.
Thank you.
In terms of what you think would be the misconceptions of breathwork that maybe you've seen across the years?
There are a couple. One, for example, is that this is woo, that it's spiritual. It doesn't need to be spiritual. It's breathwork is science-based. There is evidence that this is working and that different breathing techniques have different impacts. That carbon dioxide is something negative. It's always labeled as the bad thing, whereas carbon dioxide is something we do need in our body. It's not just something we exhale, it's also something that is very present in our blood and very much needed. And that breathwork is all about those breathwork sessions that are flooded on social media at the moment. Like it's not all about screaming and tearing all up and having all these movements. It can be. It's not the only form of breathwork. Breathwork has different magics to tap into, as we already covered also at the beginning. Like, yes, it can be an extensive session where you work through trauma. It can also be something that puts you into focus mode. It can also be something that just helps you get the right balance. It can also be something that helps you to, get to sleep, have this deep sleep, deep relaxed sleep where you wake up the next day and you're really energized and full of power. There's so many different forms of how you can use breath work, what you can work through, and to the different states you can get with it.
Thanks. And same thing with hypnobirding, right? So people might think hypnosis, what is this? Is it like fake science, pseudoscience? No, hypnosis has been used for clinical purpose, including cessation of addiction and other things. And we are actually collaborating with one of the leading clinical hypnosis in the world. He's based in Canada, and he wrote books on clinical hypnosis. And what hypnosis does in the real way, it actually helps your attention, right? So when you're talking about hypnobirding, you were attentive to your body, to your child, to the process, right? So that's what hypnosis does in the proper way, when evidence-based information is given and people can practice it in a safe and apparently useful. I think one of the best experience of my life is probably a good result that you would want, right? So coming back to what can be said about the breath work, you mentioned different breath work can be, like you said, on social media, or the kind of trauma, sensationalized breath work, right? What are some real things that you do with people to help them, first of all, sleep and then to be performant? So one is calming them down, or one is focusing their attention to do something positive.
Yeah, so different breathwork styles, different parts of the day. So you're not practicing energizing breathing techniques right before you go to sleep. That I would not advise this. um, so you learn how to leverage the breath, leverage, the times of days, your actual state, and to just very importantly build a habit around this. You need to have this going on for a couple of days and weeks. Like it says, to just form a simple habit without it being bulletproof, you need 21 days. But then that is not a guarantee of you, sticking to the habit forever after. Like you do need the first 60, 90 days until you're like cleared as in the good of having enough repetition so that that the chances of you like actually sticking to it are higher. So we're really like working on building the foundation. Breathwork is a part of the daily lives of the people I'm working with. And again, we're not talking about hours. We're not talking about making breathwork practices that, take 2 or 3 hours. It's about tapping into the breath that, you need for your state. And then as little, depends on how dysregulated you are, as little as 1 to 3 minutes are all that takes per session to just, feel present again in your own body. Like I work with people to do breath work before meetings, after meetings, like when they had difficult conversations with their bosses or their teams, or a mom who's struggling with, a toddler or a teenager, or, there's so many different challenges we are faced with. And if you learn how to tap into your breathing, what techniques to use, you hold real power, because it doesn't matter so much what happens to you, it matters how you react to it, because you steer how every conversation and situation goes from now on by just the way you are responding to it. And if you're coming from a place of being regulated and in center, you have the best possible outcomes right on your plate.
Thanks for that. You mentioned teenagers again, and some people will say that teenagers are not thinking clearly. I would say that there's a reason for that. Actually, their prefrontal cortex, which we talk about, is still developing, right? And they have sometimes some amazing ideas, and sometimes difficulty with their thinking, because their perspective and their need to separate from adult authority, as we know. Um, what do you think? We can see, if we talked about the teacher with children or teenagers in the room, 25, 30, sometimes more than 30 students. What happens if one teenager comes in the room dysregulated and then start co-regulating other teenagers to be dysregulated? What type of effect do you think that can cause at school, and what can we do to help prevent that?
Yeah, this has a very great impact on everybody in the room. It is also proven that a negative experience, that negativity weights heavier than positivity. So if you have a negative, like you can have two people, one that is extremely regulated and one that is extremely dysregulated. The dysregulation per nature, like by nature, will already weight more like heavier. So when you have a classroom full of kids, and then you have somebody entering who is like fully dysregulated, then this can shift the energy of the room like in a heartbeat. Here, I'm obviously not a teacher in like school of like teenagers, but one really helpful advice could be to regulate the room by first regulating yourself. Like what does it do to you when, that kid enters, or that young adult enters the room dysregulated? Like, check your own state of being, because you can feel, you can sense this, right? Like when somebody like this, we all know this back from our school, when somebody like this enters the room, you can feel it in the room. And here it's so important of how the person of authority, teacher in this in this regard, how they react. Are they peering into the dysregulation, or are they peering into, being more grounded, holding the space? And obviously, you need to be the judge of, if you would want this person to step out of the room in order to not mess up the whole energy of the room, or how you're gonna like handle this. Teenagers push, they want to see their limits, they want to feel their limits. Like when we are around the age of 2, we understand that there is a thing called I, that we are not that there is that the person, that I'm like my own person. And that's like often a phase where there is a lot of no's in the room, where when a small kid understands that, hey, this is me, I am me, I am whatever name, then the first distance happens. And that's the phase of when you again hear a lot of no's, and where there are a lot of tantrums, etc., because that person for the first time figures out, hey, who am I? Where do I start? Where do I stop? Like, where is my body? Like, where are my boundaries? And then again, when you are becoming a teenager, you are going through this next really big wave of distancing yourself from, this is, those are my parents, those are my siblings, this is my environment, this is the place I work, this is the place I go to school. And you're going to this big phase of identifying, who are you? And by nature, this is a very, like with the whole biology and the whole body changing, there are a lot of new things, new sensations, new emotions. This is a very impactful time of any teenager's life. So by nature, it comes with a lot of sensations. You can't really teach a kid in that age, like stop and breathe. But if you do this early enough, kids will, when they grow as teenagers, they will pick up on this. And then when they're teenagers, just really lead by example. Just less the talk, more the doing, showing them.
More the doing, yeah.
Yes.
Thanks so much. You mentioned the reality of, it's great to have one or 20 really well regulated people, but if one is dysregulated, we do have a negativity bias that comes from interacting with dysregulation, or from our thoughts as well. And I write extensively about this in my first book of the happiness series, Beyond Happy. So I have a section about the negativity bias, and I have 7 suggestions on how to prevent that. Again, the more you know, the more you can prevent before those actions or thoughts or feelings or emotion arrive. So if you are interested in the book, you can pre-order it at awewellness.org/books-journals. And perhaps that Dominique and I can write breathwork for teenager after you've done one for children. I would love to maybe, as your kid grows and mine too, figure out something for teenagers. Can you tell also the audience, if they want to purchase or order your book, where they can find that?
Just very quickly, one step back. I think the book you wrote on the negativity bias, it's so important that we are aware of this, because I think many people, and also me for a very long time, haven't. And I question myself often of, why does something negative stick to me so much more than something positive? And I think understanding this rationally can really help, work through a lot of things. Like, a lot of things make sense once you understand this.
It does. Thank you.
And regarding your book, regarding my book, yes. So The Magic of Breathing is available on Amazon, on all Amazon platforms, and it's available in English and German. And for the age range, we have specifically written this for kids in the age range of 3 to 7. It works before and after. You can never start too early with it. There are a lot of illustrations in the book, which are also just nice to look at. Yes, so you can find this on Amazon or also on the webpage.
And your daughter was involved in that as well. My son is his appraisal is in the last chapter, as he was a teenager, maybe a little bit less dysregulated when I finished that book. So it's good that our kids are also participating in our creative endeavors, and again, leading by example, including them communicating, building that trust. If you want to, talk about um, bedtime, is there some best practice that you can, mention about, like what's the best way to? You talked about reading books, reading together. Is there other things that you think parents should think about for their kids' bedtime and maybe for their own bedtime as well?
Yes, I will raise this again, like being present. Give your kids the gift of being present. Again, it doesn't need to be long, like it really can be 15, 20 minutes, but 15, 20 minutes of undivided attention goes a very long way. And often, kids have, when they're like after a whole day, they have so many new experiences, they have so many new impressions, like their whole body and like mentally they're so full with the impressions of the day. So giving the kids a space where they can feel safe, and sometimes that also involves a tantrum, like yes, just hold the space, and if you feel that yourself are tensing up, go inward, put your attention inward. Like how often I had to just sit on the floor and just close my eyes and breathe. My daughter like next to me having a whole set of tantrum, until she then came to me, like put her hands on mine and just started breathing. Sometimes kids just need to let it out because this is a safe space, like they had to hold it together for the whole day. So yes, sometimes it involves this as well. So just giving the kids a safe space, ensuring you cut out some uninterrupted minutes, calming down, like you can go sit on the sofa, just no pressure, just listen to your kid if it wants to say something, listen if it wants to just be there or cuddle, like just hold the space. It doesn't need much, and every kid is different. And I also quite a couple of times had people coming to me asking me about, yeah, but it's never enough. Like, yeah, kids will take all the time you'll give them, or many of them, some don't, okay? But like also my daughter, she would take up 24 hours of my day if she could, like she likes attention. But find out for you, where is your sweet spot of what you are able to give, on a like feeling good about giving, making it enough for you, enough for the kid, but also like on a realistic matter, right? And then what I often do is just I think through my days and weeks, and I plan ahead of how I want to sort the time with us. And then in the evening, when I like before I put her to bed, we have a bath ritual where she takes a bath, and then we just have some uninterrupted time, and then I read the book to her, and just calming down together, having that space, and having thought about it previously, that that you need to hold, that this may occur, and that there needs to be a safe space. If you're doing this under pressure and you're like, oh, it's already 8, I need to put my kids to bed and we're already running late, this can all be felt in the room. So if you can, tap into your balance, it will go much smoother for most
And
of
you
them.
you mentioned, calming down, but it's you as a parent calming down. It's not telling your child calm down, right? It's you showing by action, not by words, and by encouraging that space and that presence to, be aware of what's coming, and letting that go. It can take time sometimes, right? Some nights are easier than others, but love those real examples, Dominique, and how we can create um, a better nighttime ritual than some have experienced, right?
Yeah, you can talk a lot. Some things will be fruitful, but most of the things kids learn are by the energy in the room. Like if they see you practice what you are telling them to, they will learn so much more than just by you telling them calm down. Like there will be a certain age where when you tell your kid to calm down, that will just make them more furious. I think you're probably in that age range right now with a teenager. Um, but yeah, just letting them be a part of your regulation rhythm. If they want to do it alongside you, invite them in. If they just want to watch, that's just as fine. They will pick up enough by you just staying consistent with your practice.
Thanks so much. So, our digital wellness is known for, using technology for good and for also bringing awareness on the issues of using your phone or your computer or gaming or technology somewhat too much. How does breath work maybe help that balance of technology use, awareness, body versus technology?
Um, Breathwork helps in a way that when you're forming the habit of implementing breathing into your life, you may be more open to implementing different habits. So, for example, like putting your phone away by XYZ, or only touching the phone after you have, set the intentions for the day, had your first glass of water, and, had some minutes for yourself to just be. Um, Other than that, I think we all spend too much time on most of us spend too much time on our phones. It's very easy to just go for this dopamine hit. I mean, Instagram feeds, etc., are built for this, for keeping you hooked. Um, Bringing that self-awareness that you gathered from breathwork and from other like healing modalities and practices into every aspect of what you're doing is definitely a right step into the right direction. Um, we have everything we need within us. And my sister once told me, and I think it's like it stuck with me. The party's always there where I am. That's what she said. And so she doesn't at all has this FOMO. And I think it's really beautiful to see and to get a little bit of this perspective, because just being present of where you are, not needing to be anywhere else, consuming everything that's out there, provides you so much awareness and appreciation for your own vessel, for your own state of being. And for me, it's all about, identifying that you're the creator of your life. Your story happens with you and the energy, you use and how you put it to use.
So I should hang out with your sister because for many years I had a shirt saying "I am the after party," right? So, so it doesn't matter where I am at. If you're with me, it's a party. There's no problem. We can be 2 or 200. Yeah, it's about how you feel, how confidence, not arrogance, not ego, but just knowing that that's enough. You don't need to miss anything out. You're there, right? So I'm, super present with this conversation. We had another great talk, earlier, and just this sharing of stories, of information, of tools. It's really gratifying for me. So grateful for this talk so far. Any other, ideas that you would have in terms of how we can create more community-based practice on breathwork? Here we're online. Have you seen like physical communities of breathwork, group practices? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, there's like, luckily in 2026, there's all kind out there. Like, I think even Meetup, that's an app, is like, I think it even comes from
Yeah.
the States and or close from Canada, is like a platform where you can easily hop on like offline and online events for breathing in community sessions. Um, you can start, you can start this to do this with your friends. Like it sounds like boring and that's not something you want to do. But once you tap into this, it's actually something that, you know, it's very empowering, and you can make anything sound and look sexy if you are, you know, using the right words for it or the right
Yeah.
environment. You can make this something fun. It does not need to be something boring and, you know, whatever the hesitations may be. Create your own movement. Like, instead of going for the substances, etc., like, start dancing and having fun without those things. You know, you who even says that one thing is that's the right thing? Like, just because we did this when we were young doesn't mean it's the right way forward. So I think another beautiful thing is that we are living in a very consciously aware age now, where a lot of things come up to the surface. We are able to see a lot of what's going on in the world, for the better and the worse, but it also offers new doors into healing modalities, etc., that we haven't known before. When I grew up, there was only talking therapy. Now we have all those different, you know, sets and ranges of possibilities.
Thanks for that. You mentioned Meetup. So actually, we are co-hosting an event with Digital Wellness and Energetics this Sunday. So in 2 days in Montreal, a physical event outside. We're going to help people do some altruism and connect with real people, and also use body, so breath, body, with some activities this Sunday in Montreal if you're around. Um, I should have told you before, Dominique, but you're welcome to come see us in Montreal some other time. Talking about Switzerland, I promised Dominic to share a story about Switzerland. So I was there last time a couple of years back, and I was facing some issues at night coming from the jazz festival in Montreux, and going to meet a friend the next day, and at night I got lost in the mountains. For 3 hours, I was trying to figure out how to get home, and finally the police came and escorted me back to the place. So hopefully I'm not wanted in Switzerland. I'll come visit. Yeah.
Yes.
So talking about stories, we have a segment in our podcast which is called Real Talk. So I just shared a personal story. If there's a personal story that you'd like to share with the audience, please go ahead, and it can be about anything.
Thank you. Um, One thing I really learned along the way, and it took me quite a lot of years, is self-compassion. To how important it is to have self-compassion. Like, it's not talked about anywhere in school, anywhere, like, where you go. Like, self-compassion, cutting yourself a slack, just understanding that, hey, you're doing the best you can, and this is sufficient. Yes, there is a lot to learn. There is a lot that we can do better, and there is like a lot of room for improvement on almost anything. But tapping into self-awareness, self-compassion, and just holding your own space is something I really had to learn the hard way. I think I do better now. I'm definitely still on my journey, and I see that also a lot of people in my environment struggle with this inner critic, that harsh voice that often, you know, talks to us more often than we actually want to hear it. And I think just learning to love ourselves a little bit more, just being gentle with ourselves, will go a very long way. And that was one of the most beautiful learnings I got to have through, you know, my daughter. I don't know if I would have been able to tap into so much self-compassion if it wasn't for her, because I was not acting out of a place of self-love when I started my adulthood. I really only learned this when my highest goal was to give my daughter a life that she would enjoy, and she would be just feeling very comfortable and safe. And that made me go on this journey.
So we're talking about self-compassion, and the opposite, can be self-hatred or self-blame or self-shame? Are those some of the things that you've had to go through, and can you share a bit the transformation from those inner critic thoughts to a more compassionate, peaceful um, place that you are now?
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't really like myself. I was in a position where I would just not have nice thoughts with myself. I would be very harsh. I would blame myself a lot for everything. I would have very high expectations of myself. I still have the high expectations, but I hold myself and nurture myself with a lot more care, I would say. Um, and through those years, through those struggles, and then with my daughter, I was really able to tap into this and just learn to have a gentler voice towards myself. And only because I had to be gentle with her, and I didn't know that gentle voice, that kind voice before, and I wanted to be a good mom. Like, that was when I knew I was pregnant. I knew that's what I want to be. Like, I want to be, in my terms, a good mom. I want to have done my best, and I want to ensure that she is safe, mentally, physically, monetarily, whatever. And when I had to cater to a baby, you learn how to, talk differently, just be gentle with another human being. And through this, I learned to be gentle to myself. It was not overnight. I sometimes, am still pretty tough on myself, but I've also, grown a big piece, and I'm definitely very at peace with myself where I am now, and I'm very grateful for the journey that I was able to embark on.
Well, gratitude, gratefulness, peace, those are definitely what we try to bring to the world at AWE. So thank you for being part of our world in a real sense, and helping our community. And those conversations are helping everyone. So thanks for being vulnerable. Is there, things that you're still working on, that you said, you've did a great transformation, transition from happy moment, from more peace and kindness? What are still things that you might be working on?
For long, I would have said healing, but I do not believe in, that's a bit bigger one, but I don't believe in the real aspect of needing to heal. I think that we are all complete as human beings. Yes, we are evolving, we are working through things, we're getting more information, we are changing the way we are, but we are also complete in just the way we are right now. We are okay in just that very state, that state of being enough. And this, for me, came this being enough, having that self-compassion, having more patience with myself. Those were all really big chapters.
Well, I think it's something that we've also touched upon in our previous conversation, and to me, it really resonated. It's very important that, we talked about trauma, panic attack, all external manifestation of a dysregulated nervous system, right? So one of the most common form of definition of trauma is something that your nervous system is still holding, right? So it's not just psychological, it's physical. um, and then we also have this kind of idea where, you know talking about social media and the internet and technology and politics, perhaps, there is this idea that we are self-victimizing ourselves, right? So, and we that people are telling us that we are broken and we need to heal, or that it's someone else's fault, right? Either it's our fault or it's someone else's fault, and you become the victim, right? And I think what's important here is that you're mentioning that I don't need to heal. I'm already okay, right? And it's not, you're not saying this in a way that you don't have to explore your past or to have those conversations, but that you now evolving still, all that process is okay and enough, right? And thank you for bringing that, because I think that's a conversation that people don't have enough. That says, you don't have to be the bad person, or you don't have to point someone else as the bad person. You can just accept this as, there's this Japanese concept that says that everything is kind of perfect, even with their imperfections. And also, the name of my first book is Beyond Happy: Formulas for Perfect Days, right? So everything is perfect, every day is perfect, every experience is perfect if you choose to see it that way, without the negativity bias that we know exists, right?
Yes, that's so nicely summed up. Yes. What I mean with this is not saying that, hey, because I also had people approach me in the past about, hey, I am the way I am. Like, there is no reason to change or evolve. Like, it's not that I mean, but you got this right. But just to make it really clear, it's not that I mean that we should stay and not evolve and just, say it is how it is and I am how I am and that's good and I don't want to hear more or whatever. Like, I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
fixed on this narrative now. It's
Yep.
about, hey, I'm enough. I hold my own space. I'm safe because I'm my own safety. I bring my own safety with me. It doesn't, with this mindset, it takes the power away from the external world, because if you can give yourself your safety, you require it less from your environment. And if you require it less from your environment, you can be regulated without anyone having a stake in it. And I think this is the beauty. This is what I'm trying to really bring out there in the world is, hey, there's so much happening. Take your power back. Take it back to yourself. Instead of watching all the news and getting crazy about everything that happens outside, not because of a lack of empathy, but because there's only so much you can do. But if you are regulated yourself, you're influencing yourself and you're influencing your direct environment. And with this, you're having a much greater impact than if you are just labeling, victim labeling and just trying to name everything outside of you. So take the power back, come from, like, learn to be in balance yourself, and that you are enough.
Great. You mentioned not judging, not
Yeah.
victimizing. And empathy is something also I explore in detail in that book. Is everyone's talking about empathy, but there's bias for empathy as well. And empathy is exhausting, right? If you have too much empathy, you've heard of empathy fatigue or compassion fatigue. In fact, there is no compassion fatigue. It's empathy fatigue, because compassion is limitless, right? So if you learn properly how to have compassion, then you have compassion for yourself or others without you draining your energy, right? So I suggest, and that comes from also some of the work of Paul Bloom, that compassion, or rational compassion, compassion for everything, is much more useful than empathy. And it means that we can comprehend other people, but we don't have to feel their pains. The problem with empathy sometimes is that you see some other people suffering. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's also manufactured by the news or whatnot, and then you feel that pain. And right, and people have also, echo anxiety, right? So climate change, and then you bring all that negative emotion in your nervous system, right? So I suggest that empathy is good when someone's having a party or you're laughing with them. Then have the positive empathy, and do that. When it's negative, you don't need to take it on you. You can just have compassion and non-judgment, right?
That's so beautifully summed up. Yes.
Thanks for that. So again, wonderful conversation. We've already talked to maybe have you back in a few months to talk about different things. Where can people find you in the meantime? And tell us a little bit about your workshops as well.
Yes. So you can just find all our offerings through our official webpage, dominiqueceara.com. The workshops are, I think you're referring to the Breathwork Masterclass. The Breathwork
Yes.
Masterclass is an online program that is aimed to support and help people to understand that they are the creators of their lives and that they can actively steer the way their lives go. through the power of their breath, but it's so much bigger than just breathing a little bit. It's about really understanding that you have the power, if you know it or not. Like, you are always holding the power of your current and your next moment, of how that wants and can unfold. And once you understand this, once you understand that you are directly impacting whatever happens around you and how it will happen and unfold from here, this gives you so much freedom and so much power of how you move and go through life.
Wow. Um, so I suggest anyone that wants to learn more about Dominique's masterclass to go check that out. And also remind any parent that want to find the magic of breathing, 32 stories, to go on Amazon, another place to check it out. I wish that I had this when my child was 5. So 3 to 7, actually. So please check it out. And again, Dominique, I invite you to write a teenage version with me in a while if you want.
That sounds great. Let's take it on offline and we can see how we want to unfold this.
For sure. Any last word or one thing that you want people listening today to take away?
If there is just one thing you're taking away from all the things I talked about, then I hope it can be for you to just hold the space for yourself and cut yourself a slack once in a while. Being compassionate, loving, and kind to yourself as you are with others. By doing this, you are unfolding so many beautiful pathways of how life can evolve from here.
Thanks so much, Dominic. And to recap, we talked about reading for children, teenager, parents, school administrators and teachers, and regular people. We talked about hypnosis, compassion, presence, mindfulness, neuroscience, and neurofeedback. I think that was a pretty complete discussion. And we had a few funny stories along the way and touching stories. So thank you for the listeners. And thank you, most importantly, Dominic, for all this passion in your work that you're bringing to people. Um, we should have more people like you helping out the world, learning every day, and being enough and still growing all the time. So thanks again, Dominic.
Christian, thank you so much for your time and your energy.
See you soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.